Szeretettel
Welcome.
köszöntelek.
This video was created to help in resolving the conflicts we encounter
A kettő
as
által elszenvedett
parents,
konfliktusok, a
guardians
szülői mi
with
voltak,
our
és
children
szülők
more
miatt
effectively.
hozzátartozóként, gondviselőként hogyan tudjuk jobban kezelni.
What is
Miről
this
szól ez az
discussion
irány?
about?
A
It is about
gyermekek
the starting
életindító
program of a
programjáról
children's
szól.
life.
Mi is ez az
But what
életindító
exactly is
program?
the starting
Ez az
project of a
életindító
children's life?
program
It
azt az
contains the
információt
information that
öleli
the
magába,
children
olyan
will
információs
carry with
lenyomatokat, hogy a
themselves all
gyermekek egész
along their
élete
lives,
során
given that
görgetnek,
they
abból az
interpret
okból
the
kifolyólag,
conflicts
hogy a
their
gyermeki létük,
parents
magzati
encounter as their
fejlődésük,
own problems
várandóság időszaka,
during the
első életévük, a
embryonic,
gyermeki lét során
fetal, and
az anya
juvenile
vagy a gondviselő szülő által
development.
elszenvedett konfliktusokat ők, mint érzelmi mintázatokat fölvették, sajátjukként élik
The
meg, és
imprint
ezeknek a
of these
lenyomata vagy
memories as a
emléknyomat
reminiscence imprint
őrződik a
remain in
sejt
the
szintjén
cells
az
of
ő
their physical and
fizikai
biological
testük,
bodies,
biológiai
and they
testük
will
sejt
call these
memóriájába,
again and
és
again
újra előhívják az
during
életük
their lives.
során.
What is
Mi
the
a célja ennek a
purpose of this
videónak? A
video?
célom
My
az, hogy
goal is
segítséget
to
nyújtsak, és
provide
egy rövid
help and
áttekintést, hogy
overview and
szülőként lehetőséged
opportunity for
legyen
you as a
arra, hogy
parent to be
változtass,
able to
hogyha
change.
belekerültél
If
konfliktus
you
helyzetekbe,
encountered any
aminek okán a
conflict which has
gyermekeden is
potential
észrevetted, hogy
influence
esetleg
your children
mentális,
in a mental,
viselkedésbeli
behavioral,
változások
or
történtek,
physical
egy fizikai
way,
betegsége lett, biológiai elváltozása lett,
you will be
akkor
able to
lehetőséged legyen
recognize
ezt
it,
felismerni,
make a
ezt a
decision,
helyzetést, és
and change
megfelelő
this issue
irányba
with the
változtatni
help of
ezen.
this video.
Az indító
Regarding the
programmal
starting project,
kapcsolatban
Iván
Böszörményi
Böszörményi
Iván
Nagy
volt az
was the
első,
first who
aki
recognized
családterápiás
the
kutatómunkája
informational imprint
kapcsán
of
felismerte a láthatatlan
invisible
családi
family
kötelékeknek
ties
az
during
információs
his
lenyomatát.
family research therapy.
Felismerte
He was
azt,
able to observe
hogy
the
milyen
huge
óriási
influence
hatással
of
van az
an
ember
emotional
életében,
conflict
amikor,
in a
amikor
person's
egy olyan
life.
impulzus éri, amit konfliktusként, érzelmi
This
konfliktusként élünk meg, ez
conflict
nem kerül
cannot be
feloldásra,
resolved.
hanem
Instead,
görgetődik
it will
tovább, és
roll
Böszörményi
along.
Iván
The
kutatási
researcher Ivan
során felismerte
Böszörményi
azt
also
is, hogy a
noticed that the
következő
following
leszületett
generations
generációk
will
tovább
further
örökítik
inherit
ezt a
this pattern.
mintát.
Using
Több
his
munkásságot is
works and
felhasználva
findings, Anne
Schützenberger
Schützenberger, in her
ősszindróma
book
nevű
entitled
könyvében,
Ancient
című
Syndrome,
könyvében
collected
50
for
évnyi
50-year
tapasztalatát
long
összegyűjtő
experience,
szexológus hölgy
and
volt,
developed a pattern
kidolgozott
which is
egy
suitable
mintát,
for
ami kiválóan alkalmas
recognizing the
arra, hogy a család
obstacles,
dinamikában
hidden information
felismerjük
in the
azokat az
dynamics of the
elakadásokat,
family, what
esetleg
will later
titkolt
cause
információkat,
problems
amik,
during
amik a
the
későbbiek
lives of
során a
the
következő
descendants.
generációknak problémát okozhat az életébe.
What
Mi
exactly
is az a
are the
dolog, amit
components of
Schützenberger
Schützenberger's
asszony
work, what we
munkásságából a
can utilize
hétköznapokban
in
is
our
tudunk
everyday
használni?
lives? There
Két
are two main
összefüggésre hívta fel a
connections that she
figyelmünket, és
emphasized.
szeretnék most
I would
rajzolni
like
egy
to visually
kicsit. Ezzel egy
demonstrate
kicsit
her
jobban tudom szemléltetni, hogy
findings
miről is
on
van
the
szó.
board.
Anne Schützenberger
During her
felismerte
research
kutatásai
studies,
során,
Anne
hogy
Schützenberger
van egy úgynevezett
observed
számazonosság a
that
családi
there is a
mintázatban,
so-called number
amit tudni
identity in the
követni.
family
Ezt a
pattern that we can
számazonosságot egy
trace down.
táblázatos
She
formában rajzolta
demonstrated
le.
this
Ez a
number identity in a
következőképpen néz
table
ki.
which looks like the following. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Ezek a gyermekeknek
etc.
a
This is
leszületési
the order in
sorrendje,
which the
amit
children were
szeretnék
born that
ábrázolni.
I would like to
Nagyjából
display.
így néz ez ki.
What does it mean?
Mit jelent?
Mrs.
Schützenberger
Schützenberger,
asszony
based on
rájött
her
arra,
enormous
mérhetetlen
research
sok terápiás
experience,
tapasztalatát összegyűjtve,
noticed that,
hogy
for example,
például
the
a
second
második
and the
szülött
fifth
gyermek
children,
és az ötödik
being
szülött,
belong
láthatjuk, hogy
each
egymás
other in a
alatti
column,
összefüggés sorozatról van szó,
resolve some
hasonlóságot
conflict
mutatnak
situations in
bizonyos
a similar
konfliktus
manner
helyzetek feloldási
or
gyakorlatában, hogy
overcome obstacles in a
megértődjön a
similar
megélt
way
konfliktusoknak a
and
mintázatában, hogy
behave
hogyan reagál,
similarly
hogyan
in a
viselkedik
certain
bizonyos
situations.
élethelyzetekbe.
Mrs. Schützengberger described why it is important to pay attention to this and developed an opportunity for parents to understand why. For example, why the fifth and the second child behave similarly, which allows these parents to better handle the situation because they have the appropriate information regarding this pattern. We might ask in Hungary or other countries of the world, how common is that 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 children born in a family? Indeed, nowadays this number is lower. However, Mrs. Schützengberger recognized that this pattern in the numbers is valid even if only 3 kids were born in the family. For example, the first child was not born because the mother had an abortion, and the fourth kid was not born because there was a miscarriage. Even under these circumstances, they are part of the number identity, and the biologically firstborn child will be considered number 2, and so on. If we look at this model like this, we see that 3 kids were born, but the fifth child behaves similarly as the second one. We can explain the reason for this with the pattern and the number identity. It is much easier to resolve issues, to understand why they argue all the time, because they are really similar. They have similarly behave. They behave similarly. They are stimulated by conflict similarly, and they are sensitive regarding similar situations. This is how we can effectively utilize this model. The other model I find really useful as a family dynamics model that I would like to visually demonstrate on the board as well. This family model is convenient to discover in yourself or in your child the effects of the experienced unresolved trauma, even from previous generations. These incidents were not appropriately discussed as far as family dynamics and health status are concerned, so that they will be rolled along our lives. And Ancelin Schützengberger observed that these conflicts are inherited from one generation to the next. Why? Because we are sentient, intelligent creatures. It was coded in us by Mother Nature that we are able to change if we feel the need to do so, that we want to find an appropriate way to overcome obstacles and resolve conflicts in our lives. In case we cannot do this, Mother Nature programmed us in a way such that there is a physical change to draw our attention to issue and the need to change, and that we need to find an appropriate answer to the experienced trauma or conflict. Schützengberger discovered a model that can be really useful in the life of any family. I would like to demonstrate this through an example. It's going to be a really easy example. István, Steve, let's call him István, Hungarian. His name is István. He is 55 years old. So, István is 55 years old, and he is diagnosed with insulin deficiency. He does not want to resign himself. Instead, he wants to find an alternative and explanation, and he tries to find a solution for his disease in a wider spectrum.
Ami megoldást találhat az ő elváltozására, betegségére, erre az inzulin elégtelenségre.
He asks himself, what else can I do to recover from this? He does not like this condition, so he visits an expert who draws up his family model and discovers the following. Both of István's mother and father are alive, and he has older sister. István is the second child in the family. His sister is the first. There is a oneness from the paternal branch. So that is what I'm going to continue drawing. On the paternal branch, both of his grandpa and grandma are alive, luckily. When examining the family tree, István, just like his father, is a second-born child because István's father has an older sibling too. Turns out that István's grandfather is a second child as well. He has an older sister. There is one more additional information. The grandfather is called István, Steve, István who? As we can see, there is a name sameness and a birth order sameness. According to Mrs. Schützengberger, this means that István will be especially sensitive regarding the conflicts they experienced and did not resolve successfully or for some reason. The birth order and the name sameness are additional factors that contribute to István's sensitivity regarding a particular conflict situation. After examining the family tree, we discovered that the grandfather was 55 years old when he was forced to marry István's grandmother, which led to permanent disagreements and conflicts between them. All the time, the social pressure was so big that the grandfather was too afraid to change something about this forced marriage. Well, what happened to the grandfather? According to the family fable, he had diabetes, but in fact, due to the never-ending conflict situation that can lead to insulin deficiency based on new medicine findings, he eventually developed insulin deficiency. But he did not anything, and they kept the issues regarding their marriage a secret. István's father got married at the age of 20, 5 years go by, and István's father is 55 when his marriage perishes. They argue a lot with his wife, and they do not get on well. So, not so much later, István's father is diagnosed with insulin deficiency at the age of 25 as well. So, what is the family history about? István was raised with the conservative mindset. His parent kept telling his oh, this is the reason why we got insulin deficiency at the age of 25 was genetics. This is how genetics work. You inherited it. But István did not resign himself and try to find an alternative solution for this problem to better understand his inner conflicts. When we sketched his family tree, we noticed that István was 55 when he made his professional thesis. He did not get on well with his supervisor. He feared disagreeing with him. He wanted to write the thesis based on his own outline, but he feared bickering the supervisor more. So he experienced an opposition fear conflict exactly in this age. So, what does this family tree show us? Why is this information, this family model, useful for us? How can we utilize it?
Hogy az ismereteid körébe van az, hogy lehet családmodellt felállítani, felrajzolni.
It is important because simple drawing can clearly demonstrate a connection, a trend in the family, which can explain the sensitivity that can be developed in a family. When István became 55, he did not develop this medical condition because he became 55 and his father experienced the same thing, but because in this 55 year, he created a picture by his own balance, existing in his micro environment, in which he could experience an emotional conflict. Thanks to works of Schützengberger, we can easily sketch the drawing and discover hidden connections and excitations based on birth order or name sameness. Whichever part of the drawing we examine, it provides sufficient information to discover and increase sensitivity in a personal life. And this increased sensitivity reaches a critical point. The person, himself or herself, creates the potential series of activities that lead to a physical change in his or her own body. Why? To create a way in which he gives an appropriate answer for the unanswered questions, unresolved problems, hidden issues his parents and grandparents face, to solve these obstacles and provide a better life for his children. Among others, we can be thankful for this to Ancelin Schützengberger. So, Schützengberger recognized a strong relationship between experiencing conflicts and inheriting them in the family. She also recognized the huge importance of not keeping secrets and discussing them openly in the family. Hidden secrets will eventually be revealed. So it is much better if you, as a parent or grandparent, can tell your child the truth immediately. You can develop a new solution pattern based on your current and new knowledge, and acknowledge and tell them what exactly happened. And yes, this is what I did, and based on my current vision, I would do it differently. It is more elegant, and revealing family secrets can ease the future of your children and grandchildren so that they have an opportunity for a clean and unencumbered life. Marc Frechet, a psychologist, developed the idea regarding the Project Purpose starting program. Marc Frechet recognized that there are certain periods in a children's life when they are especially sensitive for experiencing conflict. This elevated sensitivity is important because the result of this sensitivity is a physical change, whether the child is born with this given anomaly or develops it during his or her life as a biological change in the body.
Szélsőséges esetben biológiai elváltozást, azaz betegséget generál önmagának.
We can thank you to Marc Frechet, the observation he recognized.
Amit ő igazolt.
I would like to visually illustrate this idea on the board to make it clearer. According to his findings, a child's life is highly influenced during a specific time period, which lasts from the moment of conception through the 9 months of pregnancy until the end of the first 20 months after birth. Conflicts experienced in this period, as well as unresolved issues, will escort the individual throughout his or her life until the person finds an appropriate solution for them.
Amíg ezek a konfliktusok feloldásra, feldolgozásra, szelídítésre nem kerülnek.
Marc Frechet not only recognized the importance of the 9 months of pregnancy, but he also found evidence that conflicts in the 9 months before conception appear as an information imprint in the life of the child.
Akkor a fogantatást megelőző 9 hónap szintén, mint információs lenyomat megjelenik a gyermek életébe.
When the child becomes an adult, he or she carries in the conflict further in his or her life. Thanks to Frechet, we can understand that the child's project purpose incorporates the first 30 months, and we have to pay special attention to this time period as a parent, guardian, relative. The strongest imprints happen in this time period. You can imagine this as if you wrote the information line on a CD, which is played again and again, and the child experiences the conflict again and again. What conflicts are we exactly talking about? What conflicts do our children preserve in themselves? First of all, the conflicts experienced by the mother. The child in the womb or as a toddler is in the closest contact with the mother this was ordered by Mother Nature. So this is a completely normal thing. I believe the father is also around and creates meaningful connections with the child. So first of all, the mother and the father, the parents or guardians, and then the grandparents and other relatives involved in the child's everyday life have a huge responsibility about what happens with the child in these early months.
Hogy mi történt a gyermekkel ebbe a 30 hónapba.
Why?
Miért?
Because the child will experience and recall these imprint situations again and again in his or her life. What exactly can he or she recall? The emotional dramas that can appear in his or her life in various forms. Genetics studies developed by Béla Gallo confirmed that the imprints unresolved by our ancestors, parents, grandparents, etc., are inherited from generation to generation. Psychogenetics examines the unanswered issue, unresolved conflicts, or inappropriate immune responses, by which I mean mentally or biologically inappropriate answers to a situation of our ancestors that traumatize the individual. Each traumatic experience leaves an informational imprint behind. Genetics call these memory imprints, imprint circles, memory circles. Thanks to Béla Gallo, we can control these traumatic imprints and prevent them as a parent. We can recognize this, discover this with the help of the appropriate expert and identify which conflicts might influence the life of our children. And most importantly, we can change these. We have the opportunity to control these traumas points. Psychogenetics provided us with the following information as well. I would like to illustrate it with a few examples to better understand the importance of paying attention to what happens during the project purpose period of the child's life. Here are a few examples. First, let's look at the circumstances of conception. The child is conceived such that the parents are not aware of it. 6 weeks elapsed when the mother realized that she is pregnant. First, she is scared and do not know how to tell the father the news. Will the man accept her? Will he accept the child? She already hesitates, worries about marriage and their ability to raise the child. And she has anxiety, but 2 more weeks later to decide to tell the father that she's pregnant. The man is hesitant. He's unsure about the news and definitely not thrilled with joy. It needs some time to think through the situation. So this understandably makes the mother even more anxious. She worries about what will happen to the child. This child was conceived such that he or she incorporated the mother's anxiety and worriedness as fundamental person's characteristic. After 2 weeks, the father decides to keep the baby. Okay, what happens with the little child in the mother's womb during these 2 weeks while the father hesitates? Following the father's example, the child becomes a compliance, a constrained kid because her or his life depends on whether the father says yes or no. My father has to say yes, approve my life, approve me to live my life. This is the starting program. This how she was conceived. What happens to this child when she grows up, or when she's living her childhood? Well, when she experiences a conflict, for example, uh, receiving a no or another kind of feedback, she will connect back with the moment of conception and the conception program encoded in her cells, which is composed of the anxiety from the mother and the permission of the father to be able to live. So the child will have terrible compulsion to conform. She will feel good when her father is proud of her. This is when the kid will feel balanced. When the father says that she is doing well and he is affirmative. But what happens when the father says, no, no, daughter, no son, you can't do that? The first thing what is turned on the child is the conception project, unless he or she can override, resolve that issue. Until then, anxiety, depression, and this try to receive an affirmative answer from the father will be the first things that come into her mind when he faces this situation. Considering this, why is knowing this information useful? First of all, you as a parent, you can prevent the situation from happening when you are expecting a child, because you know that you have to pay attention to this time period. You know that you have a safe or welcoming environment for the baby. You know that you have to find high quality situation for them. When you realize how important a conception project is, you notice that you have to arrange things such that this project will be the best possible experience. What if the conception has already happened? Or the children was already born or even has become an adult? Why is this information important for you? Because you can go back, solve issues by yourself or with help of an expert. You can find conflict points of traumatic experiences and develop new solution patterns for this problem. You can explain your kids the situation regardless of their age. You can tell them the truth, admit that it was your responsibility, emphasize that it was part of your project, the project of the father and the mother. So there is a way to resolve this issue. Let's look at another example. An example during pregnancy. Let's look at that amazing 9 months. Well, during that amazing 9 months, the mother unexpectedly experiences a conflict. He would love to spend these 9 months in a peaceful, happy environment. She also wants to stay healthy and fit, so she works out and eats healthy every day. However, she still manages to gain some weight onto her buttocks. Well, this was not to be an issue itself. The problem it's that her environment bothers her. How exactly? There are some people who judge her about this weight gain, and she interprets it a negative conflict situation regarding her buttocks. She does everything she can, but unfortunately she finds herself in this conflict situation every week. But what happens to the baby when it's born? In the case of this mother, the child was born with many birthmarks on her buttocks. Considering new medicine, we know that every biological or physical alteration is a result of a certain cause, and that everything happens for a certain reason in our body, encoded by Mother Nature. The cause is always an emotional conflict that had seriously affected the individual. There are certain criteria that has to be met to produce a biological transformation. Therefore, based on new medicine, we know that this baby was born with birthmarks on her buttocks because the mother actively experienced this negative conflict situation during her pregnancy regarding her buttocks. We also know that when the issue was finally resolved, the baby was born, the mother took her to an expert. They discovered the cause of the birthmark and resolved the conflict. The skin of the baby fully recovered, and the woman, the mother, was satisfied with the results. So satisfied with this. What is this thing exactly about? It is about realizing that you have a choice. If you have experienced any emotional conflicts during pregnancy, maybe it was inevitable or you just could not react appropriately at that exact moment, you realize that you can change this situation, you can develop a new solution pattern, and you can get over the experienced trauma.
Fel tudod dolgozni a saját életesemény horizontodon az elszenvedett traumákat.
Why? First of all, you do it yourself. Second of all, you do it for your future child so that she or he can live a happy, healthy, and balanced life. Let's look at another example. It is also related to pregnancy. The mother is the 7th month of pregnancy when she experiences conflict in the form of a daily stab in the back from her mother-in-law. She always wants to intervene in things, not things good for her. She wants to control everything. Pregnant woman experiences this situation as an unpredictable, unsafe environment. Therefore, she cannot focus on the future. She cannot vision how she will raise the child. She feels mentally exhausted. This unsafe and unpredictable environment becomes unacceptable for her. She is in the 7th month. This fear from being stabbed in the back prevents her from moving forward. She feels stuck in the present and unable to accomplish progress because she must see clearly what is going on around her at the moment. When her child is 7 years old, he becomes nearsighted. when we work with this mother, we discovered that she experiences this conflict during the 7 months of pregnancy. She could only see things near herself. She could not look further, could not see things in the future because she was forced by this fear of being stabbed in the back to focus on things close to her.
Maga rá volt kényszerítve arra, hogy csak rövidre fókuszáljon.
Consequently, the child at the age of 7 became nearsighted. The kid becomes nearsighted, which can be explained by the mathematics that shows number sameness, which is really important according to this psychogenetics. It will explain this later. When the child becomes 7, the information imprint in his or her cell's memory is activated and creates an environment in which he can experience similar emotional conflict. It turns out that the 7-year-old child was involved in an emotional crisis because he was stabbed in the back by one of his friends in school and could only look at this direct environment. This was enough for the old pattern to be activated. He experienced a not too strong but important conflict that activated the memory imprint, which was recorded during the pregnancy of the mother. The child recalled this traumatic point as a biological body with the help of the perfectly established brain, just like a software, started a transformation, and the kid became nearsighted. When we worked with the mother and the issue was resolved, the side of the child changed dynamically and soon recovered. The mother was happy with that, and the child as well. I would like to give another example. We have already looked at the conception period and examples during pregnancy. So now let's look at an example regarding the first year after birth. The child is 6 months old when the father experiences a conflict at his workplace. The kid has a strong connection with his father. The father gets involved in a long-lasting drama, and he might lose his job. The situation is unpredictable, and he's worried whether he can keep his job or not. This is such serious conflict for the father that he cannot process it, and keeps struggling with this emotional drama for months in his everyday life. What happens if I lose my job? He looks at this job as a personal belonging that possesses, and he experiences a possession fear conflict. From new medicine, we know that this possession fear conflict causes a bronchial epithelial cell lesion in case of right-handed man with well-functioning hormones. So this conflict in the father can lead to bronchial epithelial cell lesion. What happens to the father? He's really worried about his workplace. He gets pneumonia, from which he recovers luckily, because after a month it turns out that he kept the job, paid the loans, supplies, family, house, the car. The conflict has been resolved, everything goes back normal, so also recovers from pneumonia. When the child is 6 years old, the parents realize that he has a really long-lasting inflammatory disease of the lower respiratory tract. Why? Not only because the father experiences the conflict when the child was 6 months old, but also what happened with this kid when he was 6 months old, he considered the father's conflict his own. The child preserved in his cell memory. The body took this, the resonance level of the conflict up. Why and how can kids resonate on these conflict situations? The reason for this is clear. For example, when a conflict approaches a child because the mom is nervous or the dad is angry, the kid interprets this situation as a danger coming from the outside. When we sense some kind of danger, we hide or flee because we are biologically encoded to do so. Our response is that we hide, flee, or fight back. As a child, we first hide, we try to remain invisible, so we resonate on the situation to avoid being different and visible for others. So what happens? The kid takes up that resonance quality to be able to blend into the situation. Eventually, this resonance quality is what alters the biological balance and creates physical disease. The 6-month-old kid takes up the memory imprint, the information sample. Therefore, as a 6-year-old, he can experience the conflict based on the mathematical law specified by psychogenetics. At the age of 6, when someone is in his environment experiences a possession fear conflict, this can include any kind of situation. It does not necessarily have to be regarding a workplace or job loss. For example, he's playing at the playground and he fears that another kid will take away his own little tractor. This is considered a possession fear conflict. It can be everyday experience which activates the memory. Given that he was sensitive for this program based on his characteristic, he will experience the conflict really strongly even after a weak stimulus. The strong response can use physical change and cause long-lasting inflammatory disease in the lower respiratory tract. Luckily, he recovered. Knowing all of these and summarizing what we covered, why is it important to know that me, my child, everyone has a project purpose? If you are planning to have a child, it is a great opportunity that you can plan everything ahead and make sure everything happens without conflict and the environment is relaxed. According to the Hungarian proverb, pregnant women should be protected from even the wind. We should not only protect them from the wind, but also every other environmental factors and conflicts that can influence the pregnancy. We must ensure that this 30-month period is it possible birth in her occurrence horizon? And why is this information useful for those who already given birth, or maybe the child has already grown up? This information is useful because based on phylogenetics and the work of Frechet, we know that these traumatic experiences can be elevated, the memory imprints can be dissolved, and we can develop new solution patterns. Belev Galu made the important observations regarding mathematical relationships, scratched up and mentioned that the child of the mother who experiences conflict in the 7 months of pregnancy developed an issue as a 7-year-old. There was also a connection between the 6 months and the 6 years. When a child becomes 1 year old, it is a really important milestone in his or her life. We are encoded such that we turn 1 year old, our brain decides to take a break. Okay. So, how does this system work? From this point on, the brain starts to replaying what is experienced so far based on the stimuli coming from the environment. When we need to respond to an information sensed by our brain, or we have to overcome an issue, our brain goes back to that project purpose and acts accordingly. This is why paying attention to this time period is especially important. Biogenetics shows a clear mathematical relationship pattern. I would like to draw this model up so that it becomes clearly for everyone, and I hope it will be provide an easy and simple way to better understand the patterns in your and your children's life. Miért pont abba az életstádiumba, miért pont abba az életszakaszba történik az, ami veled miért pont úgy történik? This mathematical relationship series looks like the following. Let's say the pregnancy is listed 38. In this case, biogenetics recognize that there is a time scale shift, and the trauma you experienced when you were 38-week pregnant is regenerated when you are 38 years old. This is when you become sensitive again, and you can relive a similar trauma, conflict situation that you experienced in the 38th week of pregnancy. Hogy meg tudod élni azt a traumát, vagy ezt a hasonló konfliktus által terhelt élethelyzetet. Azt is felismerte a pszichogenetika. Biogenetics also observed that if the child was born during the 38th week, but you are already more than 38 years old, let's say, for example, 42, then you will have to subtract the 38 from 42, which equals 4. This means that at the age of 42, you are capable of repeating the traumas from the 4th week of pregnancy. You become sensitive for those conflicts again. Looking at it as an arithmetic series, this also means that if you experience a conflict as an week-old fetus. It will reappear when you are 10, 20, 30, etc. years old. You can clearly see this that this is an arithmetic series. It is important that we are talking about fetal weeks. When you are born and the years start to count. You are 2 years old when you physically experience your first trauma. Here, Diagenetics says that your life jumps to a geometric series. The two numbers will create a geometric sequence, and at the age of 20, you will become sensitive for that conflict and also experience it as a serious crisis. Then 20 times 2 equals 40. So a new crisis situation appears in your life. The arithmetic sequence shows your ability of displaying the conflict situations you experience during fetal development based on your basic characteristics. And the first conflict that is fixed after birth creates a geometric sequence and convey the numbers regarding which you can encounter crisis situations. How can we recognize these effects? Biogenetics also observed that these are not just psychical lesions. These may include mental, behavioral, or other changes in our body. Would it be worth it to start to trace back the conflicts my 10-year-old struggling with behavioral problems might encounter? The answer is yes, because you might receive an information that you can explain to your child and change something about the given issue. To summarize that, what are the factors, the memory imprints we collect in the first 30 months that become preserved from this critical time period of our lives? There is an urge in the individual replay these imprints in his or her own characteristics, problem-solving pattern, which leads to a psychological or physical imbalance that can potentially cause biological changes and even disease. A conflict experienced by the mother during fetal life can lead to developmental disorders. For example, there are many various consequences, but luckily one can easily be relieved from the conflict. Being aware that these things can be prevented is the most important. If prevention is not possible, your understanding of the situation helps regarding the issue, and this is clearly explained by psychoanalytics. The point where you became capable of taking responsibility for the things you have done as a parent and providing an appropriate solution pattern for your children that sustains biological balance and mental health, there you will be able to elevate the experience
mind a
traumas.
egészséged szempontjából megfelelő, tehát a te saját emberminőséged vonatkozásában megfelelő, azon a ponton vagy képes szelídíteni a már elszenvedett traumákat, vagy akár feloldani.
What opportunities do you gain by this? You can be relieved from the mathematically calculated future traumas, the sensitiveness and potential conflict situations. Given that these are predictable, you can get over these issues and realize that you have not been showing the right example and following the right pattern before. The reason for this is that you have not been acting according to your conscience, not as what is worthy for your own conscience and mental state. When you realize that this is an issue and you decide to handle these situations differently from now on, you start to see this whole idea clearly and make decisions in light of the consequence of conflicts. You will be aware that you constantly give receive information in print and try to control them in order to take care of our own, your children's or your relatives' health and well-being. You take a step and decide to bring a new, high-quality conflict-solving pattern into your life, which you label. You will be proud of inheriting to your child. You will be satisfied by the knowledge that neither you nor your children have to replay these conflict situations because you handle these incidents appropriately. It's really good. To summarize, why is this overview knowledge is useful? First of all, for yourself. You are able to change your life and you can make educated decisions regarding conflict situations and solution patterns. You not only help yourself, but also your whole family, as demonstrated by sketching up the family model. You also help the following generations, your own children, in light of this information. You can process certain traumas so that your children will not have to replay them. You can avoid all of these. And if you want to make a responsible decision, that make a decision now. Make it now and make it clear so that in the future you can think differently and make the appropriate choices based on your own emotional work, mental health, and gained information. Your way of thinking and decision should be a complete harmony with the person you aspire to be. It is good to think about our potential choices so that we can have an attitude by which I mean not only a form of behavior, it is not only an external property, an attitude should equally be an external and an internal characteristic. Your way of thinking and your own personal attitude should align. What does it mean in practice? It means that you actually do and say that you think. If you are aware of certain information, you will not jump back the squirrel wheels. Instead, you will make a decision. Stop being involved in conflict situation and take up an appropriate pattern. What can you give as parent? You able to help the life of your children, the family dynamics, the following generation, and your own environment to provide a higher quality, a peaceful, biologically balanced, rich, perfect, mentally healthy life. And in this life, you have many opportunities, the endless potential to surround yourself with love, health, and peace. I wish you a nice day from the bottom of my heart.